Well, the fury of the public has not abated in any shape or form, has it? The face of the BBC, Huw Edwards, appalling crimes. Effectively, he was paying the paedophile for those images. His lawyer said they were gifts for the paedophile, but up to £1,500 to look at children as young as 7. The judge said his long-earned reputation tattered, but he didn't go to prison. He
didn't, and the court heard that he paid, as you said, about £1,500 to a paedophile, sent him 41 illegal images over WhatsApp. This is between December 2020 and August 2021. He's been asked to repay the £200,000 salary that he received since his arrest, but he will keep his massive pension.
Also, the £200,000 he was paid by the BBC after he was arrested on those incredibly serious charges in November. He keeps that money. The BBC said they're going to try and get it back. What have they done about it?
This is a society lives or dies on how it treats its old people and its children. Yeah. And right now, we're doing a really bad job
on both
of those things in this country.
And I will say this for the magistrate, the chief magistrate who sentenced
Huw Edwards.
He was following guidelines, and the guidelines say you have to take into account the fact it was a first offence,
as far as we know,
and that he pleaded guilty. I don't know why that makes any difference whatsoever.
Well, there are these aggravating and mitigating factors as well, aren't there, in terms of the sentencing, which can move that starting point up or down within the range. The offence committed whilst on licence, age and or vulnerability of the child depicted, discernible pain or distress suffered by the child depicted.
Some of them were under 10.
It's so dark and so depraved, actually, that it still baffles me that how we can live in a society where somebody that is asking for these images, like you said yesterday, it's not just a case of he turned on his phone and somebody accidentally sent him some pictures.
He was soliciting it.
Soliciting it. Those people need the harshest of sentences if we believe in children being important.
And describe some of the photographs of young boys being exploited as amazing.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is he's not in prison. And he walked out bold as brass, didn't he, from court, looking as if he hadn't got a care in the world.
And it really does play into this idea that we're living in a two-tier society, particularly two-tier justice under two-tier Keir. It seems if you're part of the capital E establishment, you can walk free, even having done something as serious as this.
And that's what people are going to think. They're going to think it's because it's Huw Edwards, he gets off.
It might be.
Let's talk to trauma therapist Zoe Clues, who joins us now. Zoe, I saw some of your reaction on social media. Fair to say you were enraged by what happened yesterday in court. Tell us why.
Well, it's an absolute insult to the victims and survivors of these heinous crimes. And these people, I work with the victims and I work with the survivors, and I have done for many, many years. And these children who have been subject to atrocity, they grow up into adults. And those adults have to spend decades, if not whole lifetimes, recovering. And I'm looking at that length of time and the courage that it takes that individual just to get up every day, half the time. And that's if they make it, because it's well documented that sexual abuse survivors have a higher risk of taking their own lives, a higher level of suicidal ideation, drug abuse, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, going into high-risk situations. If that individual is able to recover, and many of them aren't, that takes a whole lifetime. And that's a whole lifetime compared to his 6-month sentencing.
Zoe, is it fair to say that sexual abuse, unwanted sexual contact with a young person, I mean, I would even say that you could be a teenager and be subject to this, even over 16, but to a child is pretty much the worst thing you can do from a psychological and emotional point of view to a human being?
I do. I think that it's the worst possible thing that can happen to a child, perhaps apart from seeing your own parents getting murdered. I cannot think of a single thing that is worse. And the impact on a child's psyche is shattering. And that doesn't just disappear as they become an adult. That can show up in all areas of their life: financially, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, sexually, their ability to work, their ability to have relationships, their ability to get out of bed in the morning, their ability to function. It devastates people. And here we are with the most heinous crime, and it's 6 months. And, the worst thing is this is nothing new. The National Crime Agency said last year that 8 in 10 people convicted in the UK over child abuse images, they avoid prison. So what's going on? This is disgusting. It has to change.
Well, that's the point, because the magistrate, Lisa, was following the guidelines, which said he had to mitigate because he was a first-time offender and he pleaded guilty. They're going to have to change the guidelines, aren't they, to enable that magistrate to have sent him to prison for a lot longer?
I think so. You look, legality and morality are two very different things, but for the sake of child abuse victims, morality should now become legality.
Yeah.
And we're just seeing another situation where law and justice are not bedfellows.
Zoe, it's sort of only really in kind of recent years, I'm thinking maybe 30, 40 years, that it's even become acceptable to publicly speak about child sex abuse. Is it more common now? It sounds like a silly question, but is this something that was just always happening, but it was behind closed doors and people didn't know about it? But now that we're aware of it, is it easier for victims to come forward, do you think?
I think it's always happened. We've always lived in a very sick, dysfunctional world. I think things like the internet have made it more accessible, more easy for abusers to get access to children, which is disgusting. However, it is also, there's more awareness, there's more recovery groups for people, there's more charities, people are able to speak about it more. Social media has allowed people to speak about it more as well, and they've been praised for doing that and their bravery, because when somebody does that, of course, it allows another survivor to feel less ashamed of their own experience, because one of the worst things that happens to a victim or survivor of childhood sexual abuse is that they absorb the perpetrator's shame, and then they feel ashamed when it was never their shame in the first place to carry. So by other people being able to talk about it, it can lessen that shame. So I think, I don't know if there's more. I think it's always, been around, but I do think there's much more awareness. And unfortunately, with the explosion of the internet, there is, of course, more access for such nefarious activities as being able to access these
So he
images.
just briefly, in his statement, he witted on about how he felt he struggled all his life because he didn't go to Oxford University and he went to Cardiff University, about his strict father. He was trying to turn himself into the victim. The victims here are these young children who he ruthlessly exploited. Do we know how any of those boys are?
No, we don't know, and we may never know either. And the thing is, as well, when child sexual abuse, when that happens, when that is documented in some way, in that picture, those images are on the internet or WhatsApp or wherever they are, every time those pictures are accessed, it's like that child is abused again. They are re-victimized. So it's disgusting. And the fact that he talked about not getting into Oxford, I mean, I find that really baffling. I mean, what's that got to do with anything? Lots of people don't get into certain places. It's and since when has a symptom of depression been accessing indecent images of children?
Yeah, how did you take the excuse of him having mental health issues and perhaps suicidal ideations as to why he couldn't go to prison, or he might be a victim because of his profile in prison?
Well, I think, if his mental health was so bad, then, he would be in a psychiatric unit. I think, as much as I work in mental health, it does seem to also get used as an excuse for so many things. And perhaps also it's an insult to people with mental health challenges who would never dream of accessing that kind of material.
Yeah. OK, Zoe, thank you so much. Zoe Clues there, a trauma therapist who works with people who've been sexually abused. Let us know your thoughts this morning. gbnews.com/your say.
The excuses in his mitigation made my stomach churn, actually.
It made me also think about, when you've been such a megastar for so long, you're just surrounded by people who never challenge you and who will always confirm in your echo chamber that the way you're living your life is
okay.
There was
a very revealing comment from the BBC's media editor saying that you always told, don't be too clever and don't be funnier than Huw if you go on the same programme as him.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. An ego the size of a planet.